Well, thank you. A lot of people who are in this audience are part of the journey that helped keep me in photography, start showing this work, and getting out there and actually becoming a book. So I want to acknowledge, first of all, thank you B&H for inviting me back, because I was here 2 years ago and had my first presentation. Every time I go to Bushwick, someone stops me. Sometimes I've been to Queens, other places, and stop me and say, "You're the lady who took the pictures." They recognize it. This is it's like viral. So thank you. It really means a lot, and they love them. And I'd also like to acknowledge some people from Soho Photo who gave me the opportunity to show at their gallery just a little over 2 years ago, and it changed my life because people heard, and my colleagues and friends from Professional Women Photographers and longtime artist friends, and you're all part of helping me. We keep each other's glue together and give us courage to go forth. And I see there are other photographers in this room. Just curious, how many people in here identify as a photographer or an artist? Any former teachers? And anyone who's ever lived in Bushwick or worked there? Okay, so good. I'd like to know my audience. And if there's something else you want to tell me, there's your chance. Okay. So, well, it's just not, I want to share a little bit in the process of how this developed and actually became the book that it did, because it's taken me time to look back to say, why did I take these kind of pictures, and who I am, and what put it together, and what made it sink. And it's about juxtaposing images, and I believe that whoever we are, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and I'd like to acknowledge some of the photographers whose work totally inspired and influenced my own. This is my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, Meryl Meisler. My grandfather carried a camera everywhere. I never saw him without a camera, without a light meter. I barely ever saw his pictures, only once. It's said that he built his own tintype and photographed the Lower East, the Bronx, South Bronx in the 20s. No one's ever seen the pictures. This is part of my story. When people talk about Vivian Maier, hello? No, I understand this. But my grandfather and my uncle, another one who was always taking photographs and you never saw them, I understand that photography, just the action of it, is significant. Some people breathe, some people hum. Some of us take photographs. Murray's son, my father, Jack Meisler, a printer. This is a montage of his photographs that I did. He was a great photographer. His pictures we saw, his subject was his family, his friends, his siblings, his future bride, aunts, uncles. They are fantastic photographs. My father was a great photographer. When Diane Arbus had the first show at the Museum of Modern Art, I was an undergraduate in art education, and I went to the show, and it was memorable. I remember standing there and looking and thinking. Her work was very influential to me. When I went to graduate school, which was not originally for photography, I said an art education major. I thought I'd take a class in photography, and at the University of Wisconsin, and a teacher, Cavalier Ketchum, exposed us in an introductory class to some great photographers. One who stood out to me was the work of Jacques-Henri Lartigue. He was Parisian, turn of the century, photographed his family, friends, with such joy, such liveliness, such honesty, and they were just such very personal photographs. This made me want to photograph and to take the kind of pictures I took. And when I saw his work decades later, and that they were stereoscopic, it blew my mind. Of course, I was inspired. So those two, I think those first two really, the first four people really inspired me in the joy of photography and wanting to do. then being exposed and admiring the work of people like Walker Evans. The people you can see now are really influential in either my Bushwick work, or you can see the disco pictures that it really, when I was taking them, I was mindful of them. So Walker Evans and Bernice Abbott's photographs in New York City. Come on, these are gorgeous. And, you know, and their thoughts, what they said, you know, yeah, once you take a picture, it's part of the past. It's history. Helen Levitt, totally thinking I was Helen Levitt, seeing the kids play on the streets of Bushwick. You know, and I love it. She never had a project. I'd go out and shoot, follow my eyes, what they noticed. I tried to capture with my camera for others to see. My disco pictures and Bushwick, they were not a project. They were my life. Okay, I wasn't doing it on assignment. They are my life. Even putting this presentation together, I realized, even picking the images, I've always been interested in juxtapositions. Even within a single picture, that this was always a favorite Dorothy Lange photograph of mine, about, you know, the dichotomies in our society. But didn't hit me until you put it together. And going out when I was a young woman, very young woman, just moved to New York in '75, and I started hitting the disco scene in '77. I thought I was Versailles. You know, I thought like Versailles, but really I was there dancing. But when I was taking the picture, it was like, this is his night. This was his time in Paris. This is my time. And I photographed with that kind of passion. But mostly, I was dancing. And when I came to New York City, one of the goals come on, you know, I grew up on Long Island. My family's from the Bronx. My father's business was in Chelsea, but one of my hero's teachers was a teacher, Lizette Modell, and I took a class with her in the New School, and she was very encouraging, and her work is fantastic. And I can remember her speaking at that time. And you know, yes, photography is the easiest art, which is perhaps why it is the hardest. My initial project, it wasn't, okay, project. See, I said the word project. I'm a teacher. On my vacations home from graduate school, I started taking pictures of my family. This is my family on Rosh Hashanah. These are my parents' friends. They belong to a mystery club. I started photographing the mystery club members. It's Long Island. More specifically, mostly Long Island Jewish. This is where I'm from. When I came home, all my friends' parents. When I developed a film, and I brought it into my professor at school, I bought a used 2¼ camera, started photographing. He said, "Who are these people? What are these places? I've never seen anything like it." I said, "This are my friends and family." So this is where I come from. Yes, I come from the city, I come from the Bronx, I come from everything beforehand, but this is my nest where I grew up. And then in the '77, I was a CETA artist, which was like the WPA of the '70s, using my Long Island Jewish photographs. My project idea was to photograph Jewish New York, and I became a CETA artist. One of the people in the program didn't want to show this work because they thought this portrait of my mother was anti-Semitic. She loved it. Okay, so photography is just like always been part of my life. And I'm someone who's collected every single ID card I've had since I'm like 6 years old, and especially any card that has a photograph on it. So there must be something about it, and that's long before I identified as a photographer. Okay, so here I am, a young woman going out to the clubs. Disco scene. My disco photographs have never been seen until I published this book. And why? Okay, you know, I was like going to the clubs, I was photographing. No one ever saw them. Besides any other peculiarities, I'll tell you why in a minute. Here's my friend Judith DeLong, also known as Judy Jupiter. We went to, I mean, really, we went everywhere. The red velvet doors opened. No, we went through. She went first. I followed. But in July of '77, who was here for the Blackout? Okay, I'm sure you all remember where you were going that night. Well, I know where I was going. We were invited to a private party at Studio 54 with one of the owners. I was very excited. I get to go out, and the lights are out. Go to the subway. The subway's not working. There's nothing. No buses. I mean, I'd been through a blackout before in '66 when I was like a preteen, or whatever that was. So we got on our bicycles and went to Studio 54, and it was shuttered up and closed. So there was a major blackout. And the next day, we heard about what happened, and that's the first time I ever heard of Bushwick. Never heard of that neighborhood before. We were Bronx people. You know, we went to Long Island. I went to visit my grandparents. They came to us religiously every month. I mean, there was no other borough as far as there was Manhattan, the Bronx, and Long Island. And the next day, and the day after that, and days after that, all you heard about was the disaster, and the looting, and the fires, and the arson, and some place called Bushwick. And like, gee, I mean, I went visiting, you know, dicey neighborhoods all the time. This was not a place I ever really had any desire to go to. It was totally off my radar. And yet, flash forward, 1981, I see the jobs over. I need a full-time job. I was a freelance illustrator. Checks weren't coming in steadily. I started teaching photography in the schools, and I got a job finally, one with benefits. And honestly, I found the letter. You can either take it, or not. I thought you had off the waiting list. No, you were like, you weren't going to get a full-time job if I said no to it. So yes, go for the interview and think about it, but it was either yes or no, and I chose yes. And I became not a 4-day-a-week, a full-time teacher. This is my classroom in Bushwick. I didn't carry a camera with me. Classroom management is enough, but really the previous spring, at my other school, I was robbed on last day of school of my medium format camera. Yet when I got out in the streets in Bushwick to just go up to my job, I saw row after row of buildings that looked like this. I'd never seen anything like it. You could see the contrast. That's why I want to show you where I'm from and where I was going to. I've never seen anything like this, except for when you saw news reports about the bombings in Beirut at the time, or remembering history about Dresden. You know, it was incredible. This was the building right outside, right next to the school. Everything looked like that. I really couldn't resist anymore, because anyone I see you carrying a camera, it's like a part of what you do. And so I got a point and shoot, finally in February. And I remember the next one's one of the first pictures I took, and I realized this is what I'm photographing. And it was just kids playing basketball, being themselves, you know, like just having fun. And these are the kind of images that I was drawn to. And it's taken me time, in retrospect, to see that the reason I didn't take pictures of crack vials and heroin needles, or drunks, or drug addicts, or I didn't even take photographs of the death memorials, because I was there for a long term. I was taking things that I found uplifting and a reason to teach and a reason to be there. I was doing my own positive reinforcement. Then, let's fast forward. Just a year ago in September, Bushwick's become a hot scene. Like, here I am going to clubs and discos. I go to this club called Bazaar, and what's hanging there? A disco ball. I go in this is the bathroom. There's a disco ball. The guy says, I'm going to build this guy who had shown up at one of I had 2 shows there in Bushwick Open Studios, and some Someone showed up and said, I love your pictures. He had a great, nice French accent. It's like, that's great. I go to the club a year later, he owns it. It's like, oh, I'm going to put a gallery downstairs, a black box. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, maybe you'll like to show there someday. I'm thinking, well, I'm going from bad to worse. I'm having these really off-the-wall shows, and now I'm doing it in a basement of a club. But then it hit me. When I came back, and he actually opened up the gallery. I was like, and he put up the disco balls, and then Synapse went like this. This is the place to show my disco and my Bushwick work together, because they really were two sides of the same coin. They were the two things that hit, a Synapse hit. And I don't think and I said, this is what I want to do. And I don't think he really got that this is what I wanted to do, but I just said, I want the space in June. Is it available? Yes. And so how did it become a book? Just this, we're talking, this is in September. Last February, I had a group show, in Westbeth. He says he wants to meet with me. Here is the middle of a snowstorm. It's February, there's going to be a show in June. And he says, you'd like to do a book. You'd like to do a book? I said, you mean like a catalog? And he picks up a book. I go, no, a book. I'm like, see, out of his mind, it's February, you're going to have a book by June. So, okay, well, your Bushwick work is important. It's historic. We need to do it. And I'm thinking, and I said, but I really want to do, first of all, I'm thinking, this is not going to be a book. I said, but I really want to show the disco and the Bushwick together. He says, can I see them? Sure. I said, well, I have to find them and edit them and scan them. No one's ever seen them. He goes, why? I said, well, I just took them and put them away. I said, I knew where they were. I said, well, let's see. I was a photographer for the American Jewish Congress at the time, and then a school teacher. I probably would have been fired from both jobs if these pictures went out. And thus, in a matter of 2 months, actually edited, found pictures, scanned, edited, put together juxtapositions of that. I had an idea what I was going to do, whether it's like, I've never thought so fast in my life. Whether it became a book, a catalog, was going to be an exhibit. This is what I wanted to do. And it was a maddening pace, and it actually got done in 2 months. It was shipped off to the printer. A miracle. Okay, so let me take you a little through the world. This was Studio 54. Yes, of course, if you were around, Andy Warhol was around everywhere too. Now I need to, hi Andy, how are you? Can I take your picture? Oh yeah, sure. I thought he was kind of shy. So I was using a medium format, black and white, developing my own film when I became overwhelmed with developing film because I was working as a CETA artist, photographing then as well, or I dropped my camera while dancing and I used a 35 millimeter. Most of my disco work is all black and white, rolls of 12. I was very selective. For financial, and also, it's rolls of film, and the 220 seemed to stick in the camera. So I was really just carrying roll by roll, and I was very selective. For the Bushwick work, I had, I think, the first Canon Sure Shot, and I bought really cheap film because I didn't have a lot of money. And I developed it and put it away, and I'll say, years later, 30 years later, Kodachrome blasts, the rest faded, or color shifts. And it wasn't, when I looked at the work 2 years ago, and when I look back, I didn't even see that this was me. And then I saw I see the writing on the slide, October 24th, the year of my birthday. It's my birthday. I did birthday self-portrait. And now you can see my little camera. And most of my pictures were on the same 2 or 3 block radius because I was really going to work and coming back, going to work and coming back to the subway. And then putting it together in pairs. It was like I was looking and saying, oh, Jeopardy, oh, match set, boop, boop, boop. I knew my Bushwick work well, and I just went really fast through the Studio 54, all the clubs. You name it, I was there. So this is La Falls opening night. And then, and I've noticed like there were same gestures. I was taking the same pictures. Guys are guys. And this is Bella Abzug's birthday party. and it was really, it was July in '77. It was like 10 days after the blackout. Party lights were back on. Took years for Bushwick to recover, but Studio 54 and all the other clubs recovered very quickly. And here's Bella and Shirley MacLaine and the little guy between them. I'm not going to even do the thing, is Steve Rubell and probably a lot of other people. It's her birthday party. I always thought she was a very old woman. She was 57. It was her 57th birthday party. Doesn't it shock all of us? And here's politics in Bushwick. Miranda was running for senator. And I don't know how that hole got in a building. You know, fires don't do that. I can only imagine. So near, I mean, it's a few years apart, 4 years apart, a few miles. Just coming up with the idea is I thought it's a tale of two cities. Disco-Era Bush. It was immediate. Took 30 years to still be in the pot, but when it came out of my mind, it came out crystal clear. These people don't look like the village people. They are the village people. We're in a place called the Grand Ballroom, and they're going out to go perform at the opening night of Xenon. Okay. And here are these, three guys just hanging on the stoop. And this was adventurous. I went a few blocks from the school. In my last opening, someone showed up and he says, I know them. I know one of the guys. I'm going to go meet him. This is my next project, to meet him. One's in prison, one's died, one lives nearby. And it's like, I'm going to find them. I want to meet them. I want to photograph them now, find out their stories. See any difference? Not much. This is friendship. Steve Rubell and Halston, and it's the opening of another club that's uptown. I mean, they went to each other's clubs. Friends. And friends. It's the same, but not very different. Even though they said they didn't want people from the, what's it called? I forgot the term, out of boroughs. No, the bridge and tunnel crowd. They were bridge and tunnel boys. Up. Okay. I want someone to tell me who this woman is. It's like, she has a T, like the New York Times T. I mean, and she is, she's glammed out, and I know she's important. She exudes importance. And she's probably a friend of Bella Abzug. So please, if you know who she is, let me know. Because she was at Bella's party.
I'm not seeing an ad.
Recognize her? And yes, I was familiar with that Diane Arbus picture. You know that from their first thing. And when I saw them, I knew that. And I knew this was the same. It was like an homage to her. I did homages to Ansel Adams. I did homages to Edward Hopper, different things. When I was looking at certain themes, I knew these artists' work, and they opened my eyes to see differently. This guy, these are not fake jewels. This is a real thing. It was at a Le Clique, had a white party, at Le Mouche. There was like different groups, different things. Sitting down, talk to him. Who are you? I am Liberace's protege. Okay. And those, the candelabra rings, they were the real things. I know the real thing when I see it. It's the real thing. And, since then there's been someone named Scott Thornton, who was a young lover of Liberace, who had a palimony suit, and it seems that he was influenced to have plastic surgery to look like Liberace. This man would be too old to be that man, but maybe he was the predecessor. And just the joy of, I was very, very aware of Walker looking at pictures like this. And like Dorothea Lange might have taken it, Helen Levitt, definitely. And it's a joy of a new pair of skates. and the color. So it wasn't the sunlight, but it could have been the sunlight. And the sunlight was gorgeous there. So like another contrast, the disco scene, it's always nighttime, and I'm always using a flash. The street pictures of Bushwick, natural light, and there was lots of it because the buildings were low or they were demolished, so there was lots of gorgeous light. And I very much recall thinking this would be a great place for artists. Uh-huh. Oh. Okay. This is an opening night of another club. This is an opening night of Xenon again. And you know, this is 1977. This is only 8 years after Woodstock, after Stonewall, after my high school graduation. I mean, look how styles changed so quickly. Look how the feelings of liberation changed so quickly. How, you know, growing up in a town that was really totally segregated. I came from a segregated world. This was so exciting to me to be in a place with so many different kinds of people. Thrilling. And here's a boy, I'm thinking, like, I want to find out, did this boy, it was right down the block, right? Did he grow, I always thought, I call it the young executive. I want to know, did he grow up to be an executive? He was so businesslike. He had such composure. He was so serious. So when I was very familiar with the picture of the boy. So when I saw the guys with the glasses going through my negatives like a mad woman, I said, oh, match set. And I started making a dummy no matter what. It's going along, printing out, making a dummy. You know, here again, here we are, it's two men. Must have been a night that my camera was in repair. So I had my 35mm, and just really for two men of color to be able to dance together and not be shot or beat up. You know how amazing that is, especially at the time. And let me tell you, these two men would have been at some of the same clubs, okay? And they're down the block. And it was gutsy for them to speak in the manner in which they did. And you know, here they are, just such composure, such style, such confidence, and joy. You know, the bathroom scene, that was kind of grungy, and it was a white party. It was always a lot of theme parties. And this was Xenon, which was definitely a scene. And you know, this funky bathroom, and this woman all in white. And here's my student Marisol. I can't remember the other one's name, but they were always together. And oh my God, she was spotless. They were the kind of kids who would make fun of me because I wasn't wearing labeled jeans. So I didn't have I didn't have designer outfits on. They were what a sense of style. What a sense of style. I want to know what she's doing now. She was sassy. And I kind of, even looking at pictures now, I'm thinking, I know how to retouch. I'm an expert. I'm one of the first Photoshop artists there ever were. And you know, the red dot in the eye, I like that red dot in the eye. I'm not taking that out. That was there. It matches the lipstick anyway. You know, the smoke and the smoke dust and the smoke machines and dancing, and if you want to wear your robe out, you can do that too. Fantastic, right? And yet, here I am in the neighborhood, and it wasn't artificial smoke and dust. It was just coming out of these frame buildings that just seemed to, you know, they're standing like matches, like someone set up matches and made a little box, and one day to be standing and the next day they'd be falling down. It was a demolition by nature. So again, it's the same. Just is very attracted to the styles of people's hair and how they just, you know, put themselves together every night. You know, if you're going out every night, you'd see some of the same people. You know, my friend I went with, we're still friends. But most of these people I don't really see. Actually, except for the doorman at Studio 54 who just invited me to be he's on Sirius Radio, and I found out about the book and I did an interview. It's like, you were the guy who opened the door, and we were laughed, you know. But other than that, these were people. This was a temporary scene in my life. I even tired of it. But at that time, I knew people because, oh hi, you know. And here is really the view right next to the school. And this is when 9/11 happened and we saw that picture. Even though I had never printed the picture, it was printed in my memory bank. So like I knew I took that picture already. You know, and I knew, and at the time I took that one, I was aware of Iwo Jima. You know, you are what you eat. I think you are what you see too. It makes you perceptive to things. This is really, they're taking down the buildings that had been standing there to start to level them down, to take down all the dead buildings. And the school I was at was on Palmetto Street. It was corner of, between Wilson and Knickerbocker. Knickerbocker was known as the Well. You can get any kind of drug you wanted there. That's how it was called, a Well. 3 blocks away, had acres and acres of what I call dead buildings. 3 blocks away, after the blackout, I think it was 2 weeks later, there were some kids playing in a knitting factory. And they did what they would do, and they lit a fire, but it was filled with explosives. And the building blew. And blocks upon blocks around it went ablaze as well. It was called known as the All Hands Fire, the largest fire in modern New York City history until 9/11. And so my school was right next to that. It was built on the edge of the epicenter. And so here, this is also a building going on. There's a building there. This was there at the time in '81. When these buildings leveled, I put in a grant to do a garden, a proposal, and they said, oh, it's slated for a project. It ended up being slated for something called the Hope Gardens, the last large public housing project built in the United States, and very successful. So this was one of the buildings, the predecessor of the Hope Gardens. And in the planning and the comeback of Bushwick, I think it's really important that people understand that some of the same people who were there then, and the community organizers, are still there. They were part of the planning stage, how to bring it back from bottom to sustainability. And most of the buildings are really low scale, built within the architectural style of what exists right now, and humane. And so I think that's really a huge part of why it's come back. Besides the artists coming there, besides the supposedly cheap rent, besides everything else, it was built for human beings. And time changes, right? Here we are in '77, and this is back at Bella Abzug's birthday party, and of course, Gloria Steinem's there, all the people, and then I knew who I could go up close to her because she was a friend of my cousin who was a feminist, and so I was not shy to go up to her, and her friend is wearing a button and says, 200 years of inequality is enough. Ratify the ERA. You think, oh yeah, times have changed, right? And here are 2 little girls. I have other pictures. There was this little girl with her little copper shoes, and it's like, oh my God, did she go into fashion? Is she a lawyer? I mean, she'd walk with her piles of garbage every day to school and just look like a little lady. And those 2 belong together. For the movement of Marxist and Leninista, the 26th anniversary. And that sign, that yellow sign, boop, boop, that meant that a building would be condemned. I became friends with someone who saw me in a photograph that was in the Soho photo show. And she's a writer. She saw herself in one of the pictures. It's not in this book because it wasn't a good match, but her writing is. And she said, she called those targets. I said, what do you mean? She said, yeah, that's what you played handball. And you would just like play, you know, to get the points. I said, that meant that it actually meant that a building was too dangerous for the firemen to go into and to stay out. But you play, your kids play naturally. And you know, to think about it. I had to look it up again last night to double check. Yeah, right, the ERA is still not ratified. There are 15 states in the United States that won't sign off on this one line. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. We've come so far. We've got a lot of way to go. And so what I've learned personally through this process of starting to show this work, the Bushwick I started in 2007. Someone contacted me about it. They wanted to do a show at the Brooklyn Historical Society. They couldn't find any pictures of Bushwick in this period. He was a teacher, and he worked with another teacher who worked with me. He said, call Meisler. She was always taking pictures. I was like, well, I got these pictures, and I started finding them. You know, I marked them Bushwick, and I found them. And we put on a show, and it was the only thing like it. And then I discover I'm like the only person who has pictures, an enormous amount of photographs of this time period. That surprised me. Okay, and then having the show go on and afterwards saying, you know, I'm not really happy with how the prints look. I'm a printer's daughter. I learned how to print it myself. Or like looking in and say, you know what? These are beautiful photographs. It doesn't matter that they're blurry or out of focus because they're a cheap camera. It doesn't matter if someone have mold or dust on them. That I can clean up. It doesn't even, it's like, I knew they were beautiful images and I became obsessed with them. People would ask me, you know, what about that underwater series? Like, no, this is what I'm doing. I just kept on working on them, like I was out of my mind, and calling up, you know, museum curators and saying, I have this work, and you know, someone saw me, and I've never, for 7 years, I just believed that this is a really important body of work, and I just like, what are you doing? I'm printing my Bushwick work. You know, like for who? And finally, I was given an opportunity to submit work for a guest show at Soho Photo, and I said, this is the work I want to show. And they'd say, well, we don't know. The committee would have to approve. And they approved it. And that changed my life. Just in 2 years, so I learned to believe in something, believe in myself more, and believe that an image could be beautiful even if it's not perfect. And that I've learned through the process that every person you meet is important. The guy who came to visit my show talking, you know, ended up being someone who ended up becoming my publisher. This is their second book. It's like, you know, honestly, it's been reviewed 50 places already. It's going to be on WNET. I mean, it's amazing to me. Or that the little girl, you know, the people I met on the street back in the day, taking their picture, they're important. And I think that's what shows that I thought they were important. So it teaches me, yeah, they really are important. Everyone, you don't know who you're going to meet, how you're going to collaborate, how you're going to meet, or even just a moment. Every person is important. And I think as people who are former teachers, you have to believe that too. That in time, the perspective, going back and having the perspective of I always. Having the time to look back, it did take retiring from being a full-time teacher, and I still teach part-time, but time and perspective, I always found it difficult to editing. When you step back for a while and you look again, it seemed more natural. I could edit myself better. And also looking at the disco work, I was never worked so fast in my life because I knew what the match was. And each of us is a witness of history. I think that these snaps that I was taking for pure, because I have to take these pictures, because I'm here, would actually be of historical importance. No. I am equally surprised that people really love this disco work, because there were a lot of photographers in disco. You know, there were a lot of, they were in the paparazzi all the time, but I wasn't a paparazzi, so I guess they were different. I'm equally surprised and delighted. So each of us is a witness to history. Some of us change history, but we are witnesses as well. And I just, Vanessa, the Mateer, the writer who I collaborated with on 2 shows, and now she's writing her memoir. All of a sudden, last week, I just thought, you know what? She's writing her memoir. This is memoir. Photography is a pictorial memoir. You know, when people say, "Oh, aren't you got to work on something new?" It's like, hey, no one says to a writer who's writing their memoir, "Gee, aren't you going to work on something new?" It's your life. You have to sit back here. This is my life, and my life is ongoing, but also looking back. It's a form of memoir. Thank you. Thank you.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.